All right, welcome back to the channel. So, in this video, we're going to talk about Errol Spence Jr. and his relationship with the media because some very interesting articles came out about him and his disturbing emaciated appearance. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So, a couple years ago, Errol Spence Jr. dethroned a champion in the UK by the name of Kell Brook. Errol went from the United States over to the UK to beat Kell Brook and take his IBF 147-pound belt. During that time, that was around the time that I started my boxing channel. And up until the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder stuff started really kicking off, I had really never experienced the debate that mean-spirited and petty as the conversations going on between Errol Spence Jr. and Kell Brook, right? Errol Spence Jr. was going to get beat by Kell Brook. He's on steroids. He's got puffy nipples, this, that, and the other thing, right? He's flat-footed. He pity pats with his punches, all that. He doesn't have the skills, all of those things, right? So Errol Spence Jr. Fights Kell Brooks, beats the brakes off of Kell Brooks, and comes back, beats the brakes off Kell Brook in the UK, in Cardiff. I do believe that's Cardiff in the O2 Arena, in front of Kell Brooks' hometown, takes it home. And I don't think, from the sounds of this media and the reports that are coming out about Errol Spence Jr. on a consistent basis, that they ever decided to forgive him and let bygones be bygones, because they are treating him, Errol Spence Jr. in the media, that stereotypical way that they treat black fighters. This is my opinion anyway. When they don't want you around and they can't ignore you, they talk bad about you. So, for example, a guy like Luis Ortiz, who is a top class heavyweight for sure. If you looked at the fight that took place last night on the Showtime card between Otto Wallin and Marius Watch, and these are two guys that are supposed to be top heavyweights, it's pretty easy to see that both of those guys get knocked out by Luis Ortiz. Both of them. But those are world-class guys. But do you hear any of the media talking about Luis Ortiz, putting Luis Ortiz, in the rankings of top heavyweights and the guys that they want to see fight? No, you don't. They ignore him, right? Kind of like Gary Russell Jr. When Gary Russell Jr. is at 126 pounds, you have Navrati, Emmanuel, somebody's saying Navarat. Forgive me for mispronouncing his name, but Emmanuel, the WBO 122-pound champion, moves up to 126 pounds. You hear media talking about how he's going to fight Jesse Magdaleno for the WBO, the WBO vacant title. It was vacated by Shakur Stevenson, but you don't hear anything, nor will you ever hear anything about him setting up a Gary Russell Jr. fight. The media just acts like Gary Russell Jr. doesn't exist. Same thing with Josh Warrington over there in the UK, who is the IBF 126-pound champion. Just acts, and the media acts like Gary Russell Jr. just doesn't exist when they talk about who he's going to fight. But once you get to a certain point where they can't ignore you, then the next move is to badmouth you and try to wear at your reputation. So, boxer after boxer with that, right? Roy Jones Jr., he's not fighting anybody. These are just a bunch of bums that he's fighting, right? Because he couldn't ignore him, right? Couldn't ignore him because he's beating everybody and he's clearly one of the best fighters in boxing, but he's not a guy that you really want to sell, so you just kind of diminish the guy when you can't ignore him. So Errol Spence Jr. is at the stage where they can't ignore him because he is the undisputed, the unified 147-pound champion, And since he beat Kell Brook and he beat Mikey Garcia, and Mikey Garcia was already on a pound for pound list, when Errol Spence Jr. beats Lamont Peterson, they can't help but put him on the pound for pound list, right? Can't help it. And now you can't help but put the reports out about him and what he's doing. So are you going to hear about any of the good things that he's doing? Are you going to hear them talk about how there's this intriguing pay-per-view fight between he and Danny Garcia, and, you know, the big mystery about whether or not, you know, he's going to be able to come back from this horrendous car accident and get all the way back to, you know, to where he was before? No. What do you hear from certain outlets? You hear ridiculous speculation about things that have absolutely nothing to do with boxing whatsoever. For example, the article that came out, and I won't say this I'm not going to say the newspaper, the article. You've got to go look for it yourself, because reporting on it and saying their name is only encouraging them, because every time I do it, they come out with another article that is just wild. You know what I mean? Just like wildly unprofessional. Not kind of unprofessional, wildly unprofessional. Because that is supposed to be, you guys are supposed to be journalists. I'm a boxing fan. I can be 100% opinion, because this is a 100% opinion channel. But you guys, oh my goodness. They say Errol Spence Jr., who's training in Texas, right? Training in Texas. Now, if you're out there in the UK and you're living in, you know, like they typically describe the UK's environment, which is, you know, overcast a lot of the year, rainy. It doesn't get, you know, you're not having, I don't think that you're spending 6 months of the year at risk for 100-degree days, right? But in Texas, let me assure you, when Errol Spence Jr. was running, Errol Spence Jr. it was middle of the day on a road. Errol Spence Jr. is running in 90. He's running in 90, between 95 and 110-degree weather. That's what he's running in. So if you wonder why he's looking so thin when he's running down the street in Texas, it's probably because he's running in 100-degree temperatures, and he's consistently doing that. And this particular video that was shot was in the middle of the day, right? And he's running in a good pace. Like, so when you say he's emaciated, are you thinking he's in bad shape, that he's sickly looking? He is running at a nice clip in 100-degree weather. Couldn't give him credit. You couldn't be like, wow, look how great he looks in shape. And in fact, I do believe that the video that was shown that they took, it actually had Boxing Ego's logo on it. So this was taken from a video that more than likely was commenting on how in shape Errol Spence is. But see, it's not just one thing, right? So this is that one. We need to worry about a boxer who is running, who has a fight that's announced and is on the road doing road work and looking slim months ahead of his fight. That's something to be worried about, right? Also, same people came out with another story about Errol Spence. And this one was that Errol Spence Jr., his behavior was worrying. What was Errol Spence Jr. doing with this? What behavior was he displaying with this that was worrying? He was on an ATV, an all-terrain vehicle. I don't know if it was 3 wheels or 4 wheels to it, but it was an all-terrain vehicle that he was driving with the guns in it, right? He had guns in an ATV, looking for coyotes that were trying to kill his calves. The calves that he keeps on his farm. So Errol Spence, who owns a farm, is driving around with an all-terrain vehicle, which would allow you to get around fast over dirt and rocks, right? So it's an ATV all-terrain vehicle that he's driving on rough terrain on a farm that he owns looking for coyotes, what are those called? Varmints. I think in Texas you call them varmints. Looking for varmints that might be trying to kill his stock, his animal, trying to kill his animals. Does any of the so on a farm he's acting like a farmer, and there's something wrong with that. On the road he's training like a boxer, and there's something wrong with that. You can't find something positive to say about either, about how Errol Spence Jr. moves to the country. You know, he's no longer living in the inner city. It looks like he's moved away from a lot of the distractions, living the farm life, and he's out there tending to his animals and training on the road in 100 degree. It's got to be something disturbing, right? Of course, because that's what I said. A beginning, when they can't ignore you, they criticize you. And Errol Spence Jr. is large enough where they can't act like he doesn't exist and that he's not a champion. So if they're going to report on him, it's going to be something that was going to harm him. And that just seems how it goes. And we'll see if the trend continues. That's my thought on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.